Not The Footy Show.
West. Plus the Wayne Ivan Cleary feud reignites as the Rabbitohs shock the Panthers.
That doesn't make sense.
Be the ball.
G'day everybody, welcome to episode 244 of Not The Footy Show. I'm Warrick Nicolson. That is Robb Cox. You can't see him again, but hey, who knows what he'll be this week. Finals week one, Coxsmith, it's in the books. We have 4 winners, 4 losers, and 2 teams all the way to Mad Monday. And evidently, they won't be the ones that made a big song and dance about Mad Monday. The Broncos took front and centre stage with that, with a bit of WWE at a pub. So that was fun. We won't talk about that though, Coxsmith. So I bring you in and I want to get your immediate reaction to the fact that Penrith have bottled the most certain grand final matchup of all time, it seemed, 7 days ago. By losing to South, we can no longer have Melbourne and Penrith in the grand final. Where does that sit with you?
Oh, look, mate, I mean, you always want to see the top 2 teams, you know, maybe face off in the big grand final, but you know, they've also both got to be good enough to get there. So you know, I think anything's fair game in the final series, and you know, Souths. There's some interesting stats about Souths that I just heard the other day, which was, I think, for the last 10 weeks of the competition, they've only scored. They haven't had any more than 12 points scored on them. There's some stat anyway that says that the last, is it the last 10 weeks or the last 8 weeks of the competition?
While you're talking. Yeah.
I believe it's an average of 12 points.
Okay, so if we take from round 20 onwards, they beat Saints 50-14. They beat the Eels 40-12. They beat the Titans 36-6. They lost to Penrith 25-12. Then they beat the Roosters 54-12. They beat the Dragons 20-16. And then last week they beat the Panthers 16-10. So only one game since round 20 of over 16 points.
Right. So that's not a bad effort, mate. Considering, you know, if you look at points conceded, I think they've been travelling pretty quietly, you know, pretty nicely and quietly along there, with their, you know, playing very much not ducks and drakes so much, but just not being the squeaky wheel. And people have, you know, thought that it's all going to be Penrith and Melbourne. Well, it can't be a Penrith-Melbourne grand final now.
It can't, and that's the big spanner in the works, so to speak, because just on South, and we'll get to the results in a second. You would have known them by now. We're recording this on Wednesday afternoon. But the thing about the South victory that I thought was most interesting was that Cooper Cronk and Phil Gould both wrote off Wayne Bennett in the last month. I think I'd said to you, they made comments about, are we worried about a Wayne Bennett coach team in the finals? And they both said no. And Penrith found out the hard way.
Well, look, I think Souths have got a few things going on at once. I think they've got probably, you know, arguably the most amazing rugby league coach that we've seen ever. He's definitely the most experienced, so he's seen every trick in the book come along. So he's well seasoned to handle this time of year. Also, you've got 2 halves in there that are still probably a little bit annoyed that they didn't get to play in that last Origin game,
as most of New South Wales fans.
And maybe trying to prove something against the 2 that were incumbent. I know they weren't up for the game, but the 2 that were incumbent that played games 1 and 2. So it's an interesting kind of a matchup, or it was an interesting kind of a matchup. And I said to you, I think we were texting during the game, I quit watching it with 10 minutes to go because it was frustrating.
Full disclosure, everybody, he did this in the game the last time Panthers played South, when South were winning, and he said, Panthers can't win. And then amazingly got back into the game with about 10 to go, and Penrith won that much. But I thought you'd tried the tactic again. It was a good effort.
Yeah, look, I'll be honest with you, and you know, like I'm an unabashed Penrith fan. They're not my main team, but I'm a Penrith fan. I have been worried about them a little bit in the last 4 or 5 weeks with a few injuries. You know, when Cleary was injured and Luai hasn't been 100%. I've been thinking this kind of a loss was coming. I didn't think it'd be to Souths, but I've been nervous. I'm not entirely sure that I'll agree with Paul Kent and say that the wheels have fallen off, but geez, they've made their life harder. They've now got to get through Melbourne to get to a grand final. They've got to get through this weekend to get to Melbourne. So, look, I think, you know, I think that Penrith did themselves out of that game the other night. I think that they were clunky. I think that they were not on point like they usually are. I think they got a little bit frustrated that their forwards weren't romping through the middle, and Souths were. You know, for a while there, I did the typical thing and thought that the referee was giving them a little bit of a touch-up, but they had plenty of opportunity to win that game. They had plenty of opportunity, referee aside. So, yeah, like I said, I didn't watch the last 10 minutes, but I have seen the last 10 minutes since the game was over. And, yeah, it was sad. It was sad for them because now they've got to work a whole lot harder. They've got to do almost the impossible and beat Melbourne in a preliminary if they get there.
If they get there, that's the key. First things first, though. Who are you today?
Let me think about that. I've got something in mind, but let's see how we wind up.
Caesar. All right, let's go. 244. We'll get to the results, but I thought that the best thing to segue from where you are now is the Wayne Bennett, Ivan Cleary post-match confrontation, so to speak. Midweek press conferences. Up until about 4 days ago, they were the most meaningless pieces of garbage that is used to promote games. I don't know how many times I was at the NRL and you just get the presser come in about the leading up to the games. You just wouldn't even watch it. There's generally nothing in there. Oh, we're preparing well. We're focused on ourselves. You know, if we complete, we'll blah, 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 blah. Well, this time Ivan Cleary decided, hey, I'm going to spice things up a bit and try and get under Uncle Benny's nose and get the referees to look after my halfback and my son. All fair and reasonable. It's the way we've played the game forever. If you're going to make a big song and dance in the press conference, good luck to you. He did that. And then Uncle Benny decided a day later to go, well, okay, if you're going to do that, I'll have a crack as well. And return serve quite well. We get to the game. Everyone's going, oh, it's nice little, pump up for the match. And then in the presser after the game, Ivan Cleary spends the first 3 or 4 minutes and he's fair and reasonable. He's saying, look, we weren't very good. We had our chances. South defended really well. They were the better team on the night. But then he went and complained about the fact that you're allowed to influence referees in the lead up to games. He said, we all do it. And I did it this week, but it shouldn't happen. We shouldn't be allowed to do it. We could spend a lot of time talking about it, but I guess the key point for me, and I want you to weigh in where you thought about it, is that Wayne Bennett and Ivan Cleary agreed that what they did during the week shouldn't happen. But why do you wait, Coxsmith, until after you've tried it, it hasn't worked, you've lost the game, to then complain about it? What was Ivan doing?
You just touched on the key point. He lost the game. If Ivan doesn't lose the game, influencing referees is completely fine.
Exactly right.
He got beaten by the master. It reminds me of when I was a kid. It reminds me when I was a little kid. We used to have football cards. Okay,
and I had them too.
Right, and a fair bit of gambling used to go on in the playground. We used to play turnovers. So you'd sit there.
No, you're older than me. We didn't do that.
Okay, you'd have your stack of cards, and you'd turn the cards over until the guy opposite you would turn a card over that had the same team that he was putting the card down on, which meant he kept all those cards. And then, and it could get, you used to get a little stack sometimes of 20, 30, 40 cards.
What a rush
and then
as a 6-year-old.
And then the teachers banned it. The teachers banned it because kids were losing too much.
Smart teacher would have integrated that into the maths lesson, wouldn't they?
Maybe
put up odds on the chalkboard.
Odds, chances. So I think what it was it's a little bit of buyer's remorse from Ivan. I think
that's what it is.
He rattled the cage. Uncle Benny probably thought it and went, Yeah, that's a pretty good idea.
I'm
Let's
not copping that.
well, let's up the ante here a little bit, and obviously got to the referees because as has been very well documented, Wayne doesn't like the fact that there's normally a couple of forwards standing next to the play the ball and blocking, probably illegally for Nathan's kick.
1000% deliberate. That's what he's
of course
coaching
it's
them to
deliberate.
do. It's exactly what he's doing.
Of course
That's
it's
fine.
deliberate.
Yep.
And on the very first kick, Matt Eisenhuth gets warned not to, not to
do his
stand,
job,
not to move. Hold your line, don't move. So it was in Jared Sutton's head. Jared had been obviously coached or decided himself that he was going to come down hard on the naughtiness of the Clearys.
Yep.
And so 1 point to Wayne Bennett. Look, trying to influence a referee is as old as it's the oldest game in the book. Whatever you can do to influence a referee, whether it's standover tactics or niceties, whatever it is, or embarrassing the guy, defaming him, whatever you need to do, it's you got to do it. And
how's Trent Robinson's team been going since he complained? I'm just saying, it's he Nick Pappas paid the 40 grand and happy days. We've gone well with referees since. They had the block play as well. The thing about Penrith and what he was complaining that they had cracked down on is that that's what you're coaching them to do. And we've said this many times. Some of the best teams in the comp, they play chicken with referees. They will do as much as they can to get away with and basically say to the referee, call it. Come on, call
Melbourne's been doing it for 20 years.
So if you want to play that game, Ivan, try and do it before the game and say, we shouldn't be doing this, because that you might actually get a sympathetic ear. You can't do it after you get beaten. And I put it out on Twitter, and the amount of comments about basically man up about Ivan in relation to that was huge, because people have very short memories or long memories. Sorry, not his point, especially Tigers fans. Because remember when Ivan won that meaningless game against the Tigers a couple of years back, and he got up in the box and blew a kiss to the
blue kisses.
Like if you're sitting there looking for sympathy when you've got that in you, you're not going to get it. You're just not going to get it. But by the by, Uncle Benny won, Ivan 0, and as Phil Gould said on Channel 9, he said, "Don't take on the master."
No,
take on the
master. That's pointless. It's pointless. He's seen every trick in the book. He knows how to react on every play. He's 150 years old. He's seen everything.
Going on 300. It's impressive. So moral of the story is, Ivan, try and complain beforehand, not after, because timing is everything. As you've no doubt seen, Penrith, their timing towards the end of the year looked fantastic, and then all of a sudden they're on a collision course with Melbourne. So I've got a couple of notes about ins and outs and stuff, but who have you got for
I'll just follow your
avatar? Lead. Who are you today?
Just wait. Next break, I'll tell you.
Not the Footy Show.
Okay.
Actually, do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, I'd love you to tell me.
All right, Mr. Miyagi.
All right, wax on, wax off. Sorted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Paint the fence.
The results from finals week 1. It's a bit higgledy-piggledy, the old order of the podcast today, but that's the way it is. Melbourne 40, Manly 12. We declared that Manly would get a reality check on the pod. It's pretty much what happened. Very impressive. We'll talk more about Melbourne next week, obviously with the prelim final coming up, but the long and the short of Melbourne is they are the best team in the comp. They proved it. They made Manly look second rate, especially that forward pack who just could not match Melbourne's tempo in the middle. And this game, as far as I'm concerned, Coxsmith, it was over on that first try, because the moment Melbourne had a lead, there was just no way known Manly were going to get any time in the play from that point on.
Look, I think it was over when we saw Tommy Turbo's first run, and they gave him no time and space. And they actually needled him a little bit, and the Manly players didn't like it. I think we've seen two things on the weekend. I think we've seen how to nullify Tommy, and it's easier said than done. But we've seen the formula for it, and we've seen how to beat Penrith. Penrith don't like rolling backwards. Not many teams do, but Penrith do not like rolling backwards. And when the forwards like Burgess and and co are coming through the middle. They're not in their, in their happy place. So whoever plays them from now on will, obviously everyone has always thought to shut Tommy down, but you've got to have some centres that have got, near or equal speed, and you've got to have aggressiveness, and you've got to be able to, again, chance your hand with the referee and shut Tommy down, and the blokes on either side of him as well. So, Manly got their wake up call, mate, which was you've got to be better than that to beat Melbourne. You've got to
can't hand. Look at Parramatta a couple of weeks ago. They didn't let an early try in from Melbourne. Instead, Manly let in 3. It's not going to end well for you. Probably the most entertaining game of the round was the next match. Roosters 25, Titans 24. I know you didn't watch a heck of this. A lot of this.
I did. I watched about 20 minutes of the second half.
Okay, I caught up. I was out for a run, then came in and then watched it sort of on a bit of sort of medium fast forward at different times. I really enjoyed it. I think the Roosters were fortunate. I won't say lucky. They were just fortunate. I don't understand how you can leave Sam Walker on the bench for 73 minutes and then all of a sudden it looked like a masterstroke when you bring him on and he wins the game for you in two respects. One, the field goal, but then also that amazing track back.
Oh, the tackle.
The tackle I'll go as much as you can look at that tackle that he made on Phil Sammy. The key play was Tedesco not committing to both Fermor straight away. He made both Fermor make a decision, and Fermor got a bit deer in the headlights kind of thing where he sort of went, I guess I'll run this way. And he completely stuffed up Sammy on the inside because Sammy had no space. If Fermor goes straight towards Teddy and makes Teddy commit, Sam Walker ain't catching Phil Sammy because he's got that whole left-hand side of the field to run to the try line. It was an impressive play from Teddy. But 25-24, I actually think the Titans, they won me as a fan in regards to how I thought they played. They chanced their hand a little bit. They moved the ball left and right. They moved the Roosters around. But ultimately, they're just not as good a side. I don't think they really should have got past this stage of the final. So I'm happy with the Roosters getting through. What's your view on that?
Yeah, mate, I think it's ended where it should have for the Titans. They'll continue to improve. I think the coach can coach. There's a couple of key player positions that he needs to probably get right. But I think they've got the foundation of a very good team there. And by rights, they probably should have beaten the Roosters, mate. One pass.
Well, they did get gifted that equalising try. Matt Icavalo is going to be having nightmares about that chop ball that went to Jared Wallace's hands. That's a gift. But a couple of points on Titans quickly. Jaden Campbell, I think Brimson's got to be the number one. Because I think next year you go Fogarty and Sexton in the halves. That's what you commit to doing that. Jaden Campbell on the wing, he's got to be in that. He's got to be in that team. He was really impressive. I like the look of him. He's the kind of kid that doesn't.
So who do you leave
shirk.
out?
Sammy or the man who doesn't pass.
Sammy or Thompson. Okay.
That was one of the biggest butchers of Baghdad you've ever seen. Old Patrick Herbert, and I reckon. Is there a good chance that Corey Thompson's erased Patrick Herbert from his phone just for a couple of months?
He says there's nothing wrong. He says there's nothing wrong, but geez,
I feel sorry for him because the frustration as you sat there, he had Dave Fafita and he had Corey Thompson and he went himself. One of the great butchers of Baghdad.
If there's any lip reading specialists out there, can you tell me exactly what Corey Thompson said? and let me give you the tip. You don't need to be that good at being a lip reader.
Anyway, Roosters will go through. Then we have talked obviously a bit of length of the Panthers and the Rabbitohs 16-10 victors. The key stat in here, as far as I'm concerned, is one try for Penrith, and it was off a lucky back off a kick. But okay.
They never
Cleary's trying. He's trying that kick, but I thought South probably could have been a little bit more desperate to try and clean it up. They weren't, and then obviously Crichton ends up with the try. Something I will say about Penrith, I don't like Liam Martin starting. I think that weakens them because I think he's better coming off the bench and adding his energy. He looked gassed in that match, and he was a bit of a weak point for him. Stephen Crichton had a good last 10 minutes. He kept him in the game there with a couple of big plays, but they will bring Dylan Woods back. I would like to see.
I'd like to see Crichton in the centres, mate. I
move Momorowski
I know
to the wing.
why. Momorowski, they've got in there for the defence, but I think you've got to be, like we said, like I said the other week, if you think Crichton's defence is an issue, swap him for defence. It's one in, one out. I mean, but Crichton's got to get his hand on the ball more, mate. He's one of their most exciting players and one of their most dangerous.
How good was the play he did to set up Staines, who's knocked on? That was a great instinctive play, and it was on, and Staines put himself into position and then dropped it. Charlie Staines dropped, by the way. Just on South. Just on South. I texted you during the match, but I was really big on the fact that South's bench of Arrow and Burgess had to have a big impact in that stint, and they did. That was really impressive. Panthers get Leota back. He was a big loss for them. Eisenhuth was okay, but he wasn't great. They might get Sorensen back this week, but it just once Fisher Harris went off the field, it just seemed like they lacked something in the middle. Penrith.
Well, mate, even Fisher Harris wasn't great the other night. I think his stats the other night was something like 12 runs for 90 meters or something like that. I mean, it's not that wasn't a Fisher Harris performance.
Is he playing 80 minutes in the finals for you? He is for me.
Well, if he's not playing 80, he's playing 65. You want him playing as many minutes as you can.
You get your week off if you win. I don't understand the mentality of, and I messaged you about this as well. What was Mitch Kenny doing on the field for the last half hour of the game?
I've no idea. I don't know if there was a little niggling injury or something that was going on, but I mean, look, even Tavita didn't do much.
Didn't play much.
For me. I thought he was going to be I thought it was going to be the rebirthing of Tavita this, but I'm not convinced.
Final point on the Panthers. Jerome Luai, very poor. He was very poor. He had one play in the whole game right towards the end with that. He made a run where he finally just put his head down and ran to the left-hand side, made a bit of a break. But that was the worst game of football he's played this year by a length of the straight. And he can't be that. He has to be an impact next match. He just can't get back.
Yeah, for sure. But, I mean, you got to remember that their forwards weren't really going forward all that much. In saying that, though, that was the worst game that I've seen Luai play, at least, in a couple of years, and very much not a Origin 5/8 game.
Yeah, let's see how he bounces back, I guess, is the big story here. And finally, Newcastle out of the finals. They lost 28-20 to Parramatta up there in Rockhampton. Wasn't a bad game of football, this one. Parramatta did what they had to do. They were good without being great. Newcastle, that's what you get. It really is. They had enough moments in this match where you went, if they can just put the foot down and get some cohesion, play some footy and put Parramatta under some pressure. Because Parramatta had the run of the game for the first half hour and they're only up by 6 points. And then all of a sudden it was equal and you're like, are Parramatta going to bottle this?
Well, I thought Newcastle were going to pull something out of their bum, to be honest with you. I thought they were going to get that game. They looked like they were right in it. In saying that, Moses had not a bad game. I don't think he had as good game as everyone says. But
that try before half time was spectacular. I was very impressed by that one. That was great.
But how long before half time did it happen? That was like 2 or 3 minutes before.
2 minutes, and they scored again just before the break.
Right.
On half time.
He is running around some pretty tired forwards. Let's be honest. But again, taking nothing away from him, he did well. But I'll tell you who really surprised me in that game was Regan Campbell-Gillard. He really put his body on the line.
He had a crack, didn't he? He really did.
He had a go. He had a rip. And the other thing that really surprised me was, I don't really remember Mitchell Pearce playing. Did he play?
The same could be said for Kalen Ponga in attack. Both. Yeah. There is something fundamentally wrong with either the way that Adam O'Brien wants his team to play, or Ponga's just happy. He's just happy being out there because he didn't step up and take the game by the scruff of the neck like you thought he would. Jake Clifford is all right, but he's not your number one guy. He can't be the one taking every key kick in the game. I don't care if he can kick the ball 4,000. I don't give a stuff about that. Can he set up tries? Can he create things? Can he look at what's happening and not turn a forward back on the inside in the fourth tackle every time? The ball has to go to your Mitchell Pearce and your Callum Ponga much as possible. And
Mitchell Pearce has to be your dominant halfback, and he wasn't in that game, and I just wonder if Mitch has checked out. I wonder if he's going to be there next year. I wonder if there's other plans afoot, so to speak. So, look, I'm not sure, mate. I think it, again, like the Titans, it ended where it should in the first week.
Yep.
They were good enough to get there. They're probably not good enough to go on with it. And if either of those teams, the Titans or the Knights, had gone on with it, we'd probably be scratching our head a little bit.
Exactly.
Wonder what the hell just happened. So.
Yeah. So that wraps up finals week 1. After the break, we'll have a quick look at the finals week 2 matchup, the semi-finals.
Not the Footy Show. I love the smell of the finals in the morning.
Okay, we're back. It's episode 244 on the Footy Show. Warrick, Nicolson, Robb, Cox, or as you have seen for most of the episode, Mr. Miyagi. Is Karate Kid 1 the best of the films?
100%. Yeah, 100%. And I'll tell you what else is good is Cobra Kai.
Never seen it.
The reboot.
Worth watching?
Very good.
Worth watching?
Very good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Isn't
really
he like
good.
the bad guy in Karate Kid, like the good guy in Cobra Kai?
Kind of, but the good guy is still the good guy too. Okay. What you're doing is you're seeing it a little bit more from Johnny's angle. So yeah, got to watch it. Cobra Kai.
There's some TV recommendations here on the Footy Show. There are games on the weekend. We have 2 semi-finals. We've got on Friday night the Manly Seagulls taking on the Sydney Roosters, and then on Saturday night Penrith versus Parramatta. Right now, both the 2 teams that lost the top 4 games are probably sitting there going, the pressure's on now. Rather than thinking, hey, we have a good chance at having a week off and relaxing into the prelim final, all of a sudden we've got to play 2 teams that actually are going all right. We'll start with Manly and the Roosters. Roosters finally get a couple of players back, and then they lose a couple more. Takiaho is out. Sam Verrills has been suspended for something that Junior Paulo did, and a whole bunch of players have done the last 6 weeks. I'm not saying that Verrills should have got off. I just don't understand how he gets suspended and other players don't. But that's the big conundrum for the Roosters. Takiaho only played a couple of minutes on the weekend, but he will not be there. Sam Walker is on the bench again for the Roosters, mate. But are you thinking what I'm thinking? And that is that Lachlan Lamb will play number 1 and number 9, and Walker will go into the halves?
Yeah, that's not what I was thinking. I was thinking Victor Radley might play 9, and at least to start the game. Yeah, Coach Robinson has a real fetish for this, leaving Sam Walker on the bench for 70 odd minutes. So, but I'm not sure that that's going to work out. I've got a feeling this week if he tries to leave him there this long, the game will be gone. I think Manly are obviously a step or 2 up from who they played last week in the Titans. And let's look at Manly's record for the last 10 weeks. It's been pretty good.
Yes.
They had a blip the other night. They came across the best team in the comp on a night where the best team proved that they're the best team, and but they'll bounce back from that. They'll be a tough match for the Roosters this week, given that they've lost Verrills, who's a rising star at the Roosters, and also Takiaho, who's really, him and Jared are your two pillars of strength in that pack. Big loss. I don't know which one's the bigger. Maybe they're both equally big losses. I think he'll start with Lamb. I think he'll start with Radley at 9, and maybe they'll switch. When they drop a front rower off, Radley will go back to the back row. Lamb might go to hooker, and Walker comes on once the heat's gone out of the game a little bit.
I don't know if I can do that simply because of how good Radley was at 13 last week. He was phenomenal. He was so good in that role, both sides of the ball. The try set up for Tedesco after almost losing his arm was fantastic on Lusone. That's the thing that worries me about if Robinson decides to put him at 9. Is it, do you take him out of the game for 20 minutes just to fill a spot?
You know what? I think his defence won't change much because he defends in the middle anyway. I think that Radley doesn't seem to do his best attacking work until the forwards are a little bit more tired, because he's not a very big body. So, personally, I don't think you'd be losing much. but what you might do is you might save Sam Walker from the Manly forwards getting a hold of him, because he's little, man. He's 75 kilos. He's a little dude. And obviously Robinson's protecting him for a reason. He doesn't want him to go through that rough and tumble yet until he can put on another 20 kilos, So personally, that's what I would do, unless they've got another 9 lurking around. I can't
Marshby's
really remember
the
their
guy
roster.
who's in the squad, but he's only played a few games of first grade. He's done an all right job when he's had to be called on, but all he'll do is tackle and pass. So I would start Walker, I think, in this game, and you touched on it. There's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. Both teams are going to need to score points, and you're going to need Walker on the field, as far as I'm concerned, for them. And Lamb, he was solid last week. He wasn't particularly great. I think he can play that 9 role for you and allows Bradley to stay playing 80 minutes at lock, which I think is what you need. Manly, the only change for them is Lachlan Croker comes probably back in at hooker, which I think is a good pickup for him. But it's on Alawai, Tapau, Trebojevic, Olakatu, Schuster, who's been quiet as a mouse for a month. Things have got a spark under his. They've got a lot of fire under him, because he has been very average for a month now. The Dylan Walker playing lock role after 20 minutes, I don't mind it, but the key for Manly is they've got to get tempo in the middle of the field. Their forwards have got to really set a platform, because once you free up the field for DCE, Foran and Tommy, the Roosters, even with Teddy playing unbelievable footy, they can't run with Manly if Manly win the ruck. They can't.
No,
I really don't think they can. No matter how much JWH tries, they don't.
No.
Having said that, the weakness that was totally and utterly exposed by Craig Bellamy last week is Morgan Harper and DCE on the right edge. Bellamy would have been sitting there just, rubbing his hands together for a week going, I am just going to annihilate that side of the field. And annihilated he did. Morgan Harper, that's the worst game of first grade he'll have possibly in his entire career. And it's a big chance for him to bounce back this week, because he got found out in a massive way. Let's see what he's got this week, because I just, you don't want a player finishing a season getting exposed 2 weeks in a row in the biggest games of the year. So big challenge for him and DCE, because it's on DCE as well. He left him exposed a couple of times, and poor old Morgan wasn't good enough to make up for it. Right now, who are you tipping?
Manly.
By how many?
Manly. Oh, mate, I think like you say, there's going to be some points, and I'd say Manly by 14.
Oh, I'm not in the same postcode as that. I've got Manly by 1, but I think there'll be a lot of points. I'm thinking like a 25-24 kind of thing.
Yeah, I think Manly are going to have too much for them, mate. I think the wheels may finally fall off the Roosters wagon here, and terribly bad luck this year in players being, in my mind, wrongfully suspended and also injured in big ways. So I'm still going to give them a massive pass mark, even if they do lose this week. The Roosters, I think they've done phenomenally well. And I think the coach and the organisation is superb, to be honest with you, as good as Melbourne if they have their players back.
I think this is the week across the season that if you can get to this week as a coach, it's a pass mark. The only way this week isn't a pass mark is if you're losing both games, finishing top 4.
Well, we're obviously going to talk about the next game as well. If Ivan loses this week, it's a fail, mate. It's an F.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So if you're in the top 4 and you lose back to back, this week is the week that's the only time it can be like not a good year.
Could there be anything worse as a team that nearly won the minor premiership to go out to be flushed down like?
I reckon the worst situation is back when we had the top 5, when the minor premier would streak the field for the whole year. They get a week off at the start of the finals. Then they lose.
Boom, gone.
Boom, back to back and out. I mean, South in 89, Canterbury in 93. There's a whole bunch of sides that were great teams.
Well, what about when
straight out?
What about when with the top 8, when we used to be when 3 and 4 could be exposed?
Oh yeah, and the old McIntyre garbage. I call it system. Sorry, I call it garbage. But
I remember Saints one year going from I think 4th
and out in the first week.
See ya.
Yeah, I don't like that. But Penrith, it's Penrith Parramatta on Saturday night. Brad Arthur's saved his season with the win last week. Just in terms of how it'll be all viewed.
Mate.
He saved his job. He couldn't go out in the first week.
Mate, I'll tell you, Flano's been sniffing around Parramatta for the last 6 weeks, and I think finally he'll be off that trail, that scent, because I think they'll keep him. But
Ivan, if Penrith get knocked out this week, the arguments will come up of the great teams in the past where you go regular season, amazing, fantastic, and then no premierships to show for it. The beauty of this Penrith team is that you go, look, they'll be back in contention next year. It's just, you can't see them dropping off unless something like happened to the Roosters happened to them. But
I don't know, mate.
The pressure on Ivan to deliver, because remember, this is Gus's team. This isn't Ivan's team. This is Gus's team.
Gus has put this team together. Ivan is taking the cream off the cake at the moment, but unfortunately, mate, I don't know. Look, people say that the window is open for the next few years. I'm not too sure about that, because I'll tell you why. Kickout will go this year. This will be Kickout's last year at Penrith.
They don't want to up the money for him, do they? They've said
no. And I'll tell you who'll be next. Luai will be next. Unless he loses big form, he doesn't, he looks across the field at Nathan, who's on 1 point, whatever it is, million a year, and Luai's on 600 grand.
Did Luai sign this year? Did Luai re-sign this year? I thought Luai re-signed
for another
this year.
2 years.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean anything. Let's be honest. When
he signed a 3-year contract extension in February of this year.
Okay. So, yeah, I think Luai could be. Depends on how he plays. But look, there's a bunch of them.
This is before he played Origin, remember?
That's right. So there's a few nuggets in that team that will probably want to make some more money elsewhere. That team, make no mistake, that team could be ripped apart within 3 years.
Within 18 months, let's be honest, because it's the way the system works. It's a year out from when your contract actually ends. It's not
that's right.
At the end of your contract.
That's right. And quite more often than not, quite often a team will let a player go with the eyes to the future rather than worrying about a player playing out his time. Look, I think there was actually an interesting stat that I saw last night. I think Buzz Rothfield brought it up, and I don't often talk about Buzz, but there was an interesting stat, and that is there has been no coach win a premiership if they've already coached 250 games and haven't won a premiership. And Ivan's on 360 odd. So
is it the Brian Smith stat, is it?
It is. The Brian Smith one was 600 odd games, or 500 and something games.
Made a few grand finals though. I find that part of that whole argument around whether you haven't won or not a little bit hollow if the coach has actually got to multiple grand finals. I think that's, it's a little bit harsh. If they haven't made any grand finals, I'll get it.
I'll tell you what I think, mate. Like I say, I'm a fan of Penrith. And I think there's a couple of players that are playing better than they did last year. Namely, Nathan Cleary is a better player than he was last year. But I think Penrith were more dangerous last year. They looked to me to be more dangerous last year. They had the unpredictability. They could pull something out of their bum. I don't feel that this year with them.
Is it fair? Because last year, particularly, there was this no fear, caution to the wind approach. And you saw bits of it this year. You certainly did. But
yeah,
I got that impression out of the press conference and even the performance against South that Cleary wanted to grind that game away. He thought, we'll go in the trenches and we'll beat them. It's not Penrith's
You mean Nathan or Ivan?
No, Ivan. I think that's the approach that he had to the game, was to play that sort of safe, tit for tat kind of thing. It's not Penrith's go. Penrith's go is blow them off the park. And it's worked really well for him. I don't think he can play safe.
There was a game a few weeks ago.
Even Parramatta.
Was it the Souths game a few weeks ago? Whatever game, there was a game a few weeks ago where Penrith got off to a really bad start and Nathan saved the day for him. South. So I wonder if there was an element of that. And sometimes the halfback can't save you when quite often if your forwards aren't going forward for a long time, The halfback can't do much, you know. I mean, he might get one try for you, maybe two, but I don't know, mate. There's been elements of Ivan's coaching in this year that there've been weird moments, haven't there? I mean, there's been moments of a little bit like Ricky Stewart, you know, leaving players off for a long amount of time and not bringing players back on when they're needed and things like that. And, you know, and look, when he didn't rest his players the final week of the
I didn't mind that
competition.
I didn't mind that because they hadn't played a lot of footy together.
Yeah, I didn't mind it either. I didn't mind it either. But in his mind, he was going to win last weekend. And now they haven't. I bet you he'd pay $1 million to give them a rest, to go back to round 25 and give 5 or 6 of them a rest, I think. But look, maybe it's just a blip on the radar. I think they'll beat Parramatta this week. You know, I don't think there's going to be a lot in it. I think it's probably going to be 8 points in it. I think they'll beat Parramatta this week with pure class. I think he's got to get them back onto the right page. My biggest issue is the week after. I know we're not trying to get too far ahead of ourselves. I don't think they can beat Melbourne. I don't think any team can beat Melbourne, which makes the rest of this competition seem quite boring. But I think the best chance they would have had of beating Melbourne, I'm only going to touch on this for a minute because I don't want to get too far ahead, but I think the best chance they would have had of beating Melbourne was to win last week, both rest, right? Both go to the grand final, and then hope like hell that Melbourne had a tough prelim, you know, a 100-minute game or a 90-minute game and got the poop beat out of them, and had a couple of injuries and maybe a suspension or two even. You know, it's a low percentage play, but I honestly think that's the only way that any team in this competition is going to beat Melbourne.
Okay, let me just quickly turn that around. And sorry, Parramatta fans, we haven't got to you yet, but we're both going to go Penrith this weekend. But would you prefer to play the best team in the comp in a prelim final or a grand final?
I'd rather play them in a grand final. I'll tell you why. Because I think, especially with a team like Melbourne, they're very physical. They're going to make you hurt in a prelim. And even if you win, you're going to be wounded. You're going to be limping. And then all it takes is playing South again with their tails up. You know, because that side of the draw is either going to be South, Manly, or the Roosters.
Yep.
I'd suggest South might do the business. Manly could too.
Yep.
But I don't think avoiding the best team is the right strategy. I think, you know, to be a champion, you got to beat a champion.
Yep.
I don't like the idea of avoiding teams, you know, and getting in through the back door. But look, I still don't think that anyone can. You know, Penrith on their day, if they're playing really well, can and have beaten Melbourne, but not in a preliminary or a grand final. They do. You know, Melbourne do the big events well. They do the milestone games. They do that stuff real well. You know, they've got their heads screwed on, mate.
Yeah. Parramatta.
Yep.
Are we just filling time if we talk about their chances?
No, look, I don't think they're totally without their chances. I think if they can get Penrith going backwards like South did last week, they're in. They're in with a chance. I think, you know, my problem with Parramatta is about their clutch players. You know, Mitch Moses doesn't do clutch. No. When the heat's on, when the blowtorch is on, and he's got to perform, he doesn't. And I know that sounds horrible. It sounds like I'm beating him up. I'm not. I'm just reading history, man. That's what he has done in the past. You know, you saw it. You saw when they played Penrith, I think the last time. He had to kick a goal either to get him into extra time or to win the game. I can't remember which one it was.
That was in round
13, 14.
Yeah, round 16.
16.
Yep. The game was on his boot. Yep.
Yeah, the game was on his boot, and he wasn't out on the sideline. He was probably 35, 40 metres out and probably 15 metres in from touch. Totally gettable goal for a guy that kicks like he does. And he misses. He choked. And he's done it before. He choked in the Origin. I don't care what anyone says. He choked.
He was poor. Yeah.
You know, and my problem with a team that is relying on on clutch plays and plays that are high intensity, high pressure plays. This game will be the highest pressure game that Parramatta have played in the last. This is to go into a preliminary for one game away from a grand final. You know, they had a very, very poor year a couple of years ago. To bounce back from that has been good, but don't think for one moment this won't be a high pressure game for Parramatta. They'll be feeling it, every last one of them, and especially the 7. You always look to your 7. So yeah, I think that's what may. I hope I'm wrong. I'd like to see the kid have a good game. I really would. St George is my team, so I'm kind of. Penrith is my second team, but it's not like your first team is in there, and so I just want to see a good game. I'd like to see them all play well, but at the end of the day, I can only go off on what they've done in the past.
Exactly.
To see what someone's going to do in the future. But if Regan Campbell-Gillard stands up like he did last week, and you've got some tough forwards in that team. You've got Paulo and Nathan Brown and Regan Campbell-Gillard, and Ray Stone's been playing the house down. He's been cutting people in half.
How did he not get subbed for the HIA though? That was disgraceful. He got knocked out and he just stays on there.
I know.
And Tyson Frizzell comes back. What's going on? It's just because it's finals. It just makes a mockery. Anyway, I shouldn't get dragged into that. 2 players I'm going to put all the heat on. Mitchell Moses isn't one of them. I think we've seen the Mitch Moses that is the Mitch Moses. The 2 guys that have got to stand up for Parramatta are Clint Gutherson and Dylan Brown. Dylan Brown was just meh against Newcastle. He can't be meh against Penrith. He's too good a player. He can't sit back and let Mitch and Gutho do it all. Stand up. You're a good enough player.
Yeah.
I really rate Dylan Brown, but
I do too.
You can't wait for the game to come for you. You can't do what Jack Whiten did this year. It's time to step up because your team, as you say, it's a game from a prelim. It's like you never know what can happen. And there's a decision that I'd love to see Barath make. I don't think he will. I think he's shown his cards the last month or two. But Parramatta's best football is played when Ryan Madison's on one edge and Isaiah Papali'i's on the other. They can't both be on your bench. Sean Lane back to the bench, Murata Niokore back to the bench. Both give a bit of impact when they come on, but you've got to start Madison and Papali'i in your back row. I really think there is. You've got to win the game. Your best team players have to be on the field as much as you can. Having said all that,
I think Papali'i has been in the top 2 or 3 edge back rows in the comp.
He's been neutered since he went to prop. I don't
and they've put him in the middle. Why would you put him in the middle? It doesn't make any sense to me. You've got a bloke that's killing it out there on the left edge, absolutely killing it. No, he had spiders on him. No one wanted to touch him.
Yep.
And you put him in the middle. Oh, he'll go better in the middle.
Really? Crazy, especially when you got RCG back and you avoided a suspension for Paulo. Be bold, Brad Arthur. Not being bold for the last couple of years. How's it turned out for you? Have a crack. Penrith by 8 for me. You've got Penrith by 8 as well. So that means that we will end up with prelim finals. That
if we're right,
not quite the order that we thought. But on the Friday, it'll be Rabbitohs versus Manly. I'm good enough with that. That'll be an interesting game. That's at Suncorp Stadium on the 24th of September. And then Melbourne host a prelim final on the 25th of December, also at Suncorp at 4 p.m. kickoff, and that we think will be against Penrith. Now, just as it's a drive-by, but I'm going to say it anyway, the fact that it took the NRL 5 days to change when this game was being played, when the moment Melbourne beat Manly on the Friday night, you knew that the prelim final that Melbourne would be playing would be going head-to-head with the AFL Grand Final. All we ask sometimes is just a bit of proactiveness. Get ahead of the game, look at what's happening and go, this would be a really good fill-up for the game if we actually come out and say, we're going to move this game to 4 p.m. Instead, it required a day of complaints from people, the CEO of the Storm to make a phone call, go into the press saying why. It's like, is it that hard, Coxsmith? Is it really that hard?
It's not hard.
Because I can tell you,
it's not hard at all.
There's 2 elements to it that I just need to call out. One is Abdo comes out and says, we did it because the fans, listen to the fans. It's not about the fans. It's the fact that Channel 9 knew that if they've got a game that rates its pants off most times at this time of the year, up against the AFL Grand Final, it's not going to rate as well. It's not going to be as advantageous for their sponsors. That's why it changed. It's not because the fans complain. It's because Channel 9 go, we would like a game not going up against the AFL Grand Final. That'd be sweet. So just get on the front foot and say it. 3 days. It's the Ivan Cleary argument. Say it beforehand. Get in front of the things. You look like geniuses. It's not that hard. Anyway, so that's where we're at. Couple other bits of news quickly. Adam Elliott, gone from the Bulldogs. Gus has sacked him.
Yeah.
Sorry, the board has sacked him. I'm not surprised. It was happening. If you listen to Gus's podcast, you knew the moment that he identified that the moment Adam Elliott started drinking again, bad things happened. You knew that the writing was on the wall there. With Pride. Adam, who's going to pick him up? Because you know that he's young enough and good enough and all the rest of it to get a job. So who's going to pick him up?
Well, look, if you look around at who needs a good edge back rower.
Is he an edge back rower or is he a lock? I've always thought he's a better lock.
Well, he and Josh Jackson flip and flop a little bit, you never really know. But either way, he can play either or, and he can play that middle forward, mobile middle forward role. Who wants him? Who's going to get him? Well, let's go through the bottom 8, shall we? Because whenever a player comes on the scene on the market, the Tigers are after him, but they're not really. But they are, but they're not.
It's about the only place that does scream, we need a back rower.
Yep. Yeah, they do. They need someone, a good, honest back rower. But I don't know.
Does he make them that much better? He's a good player, but is he a difference maker for the Tigers if he goes there? I don't think he is.
Mate, I think I might have said in probably round 3 or 4 this year, I like the Tigers forwards. Mostly, I like the Tigers forwards. I don't think that there's much wrong with the Tigers forwards. I think there's a fair bit wrong with the backs, but I think any team that that is a little thin, on the ground for reserves, maybe Dragons. Maybe the Dragons would like Adam Elliott there. Maybe they can show him the nightlife of Wollongong, and could all work out well.
The crux of this is that Elliott's on big money at the Dogs, loses his contract. His asking rate has just been maybe not cut in half, but it's been significantly altered in the market.
Oh yeah,
it's like, dude, you've done it to yourself. So that's the way it is. John Asiata is the guy who's replaced him on the roster. I like him, but he's a complimentary guy. He's maybe in your best 17 on a good day. But again, he's going to be competing directly with Josh Jackson for minutes. Mary McGregor, he has a job. He is now the New South Wales assistant coach. He's replacing Craig Fitzgibbon. Are you happy with that?
I'm not unhappy with it, mate. I think both Freddie and Brandy run a pretty tight ship there, and I think you need your assistant coaches, and Mary was in the New South Wales squad before, so I can't see a problem with that, mate. I don't think I think, look, if we go back to what we spoke about last week or the week before, and we spoke about our Saints doing better now without Mary or with him, I think on paper they're one game ahead of where they were, but I'm not entirely sure that the problem was all Mary. Definitely there was a contributing factor, but I don't think he's going to be a bad influence on the New South Wales team, given that he was a New South Wales legend himself, and also an Australian player. Mary was a great player, and from all reports and from my experiences with him, a really good bloke. I think he just got caught up at the wrong time at St George.
I think if Freddie likes him, it's good enough for me. If Freddie's happy to have him on there, that's a big tick from me. As we leave, Not the Footy Show, episode 244, Billy Slater, does he actually want the job at Queensland or not? Because I'm going to say that when he was interviewed on Channel 9, he either wants a lot more money than they're offering him, or he just is not sure whether this job is actually right for him, because he skirted old Billy. he skirted around the topic as much as he could when he got pressed about it from Rabs, I think it was.
When I think about the realities of being an Origin coach, if you were in that position where someone was knocking on your door saying, "Hey, Wazza, you want to be the New South Wales coach?" Take away all the frillings and everything else. What would be the first thing you would do? You want to be New South Wales coach? What would be the first thing you'd do? I'll tell you what mine would be. I'd want to know who's in the squad or what the squad could be and who's on the rise.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to go and do 3 games a year and lose them all. Okay, you're probably going to make 300 grand or something like that. 350 is probably the pay packet, I would suggest. But if you're looking at the stocks and you're going, oh, geez, I don't know, but 3-year deal, geez, I'm not sure that our best players are even on the radar yet. Looking at under 18s and onwards.
Yeah.
So maybe he doesn't like what he's seeing there, or like you said, maybe he wants a lot more money.
I get the sense it could be that, simply because he touched on the element of, I have to work out what my life looks like, essentially, is what he said. Now, that tells me that if the money's right, yeah, I'm doing it. And it's going to have to be significantly more money than I think what they're offering, because I think he's pretty comfortable with what he's doing right now. And see, the thing about the Freddie comparison that I made last podcast, Freddie's made it look pretty easy. All things considered, he's made the whole, doing Origin, doing Channel 9, keeping Malaricanism, he's made that look pretty easy. Billy has definitely taken a bit more of a serious look on his telecasts. Yeah, but his approach to that.
But Freddie's a different cat, mate.
He's a different cat. I agree.
He's a very different dude to Billy.
So is Billy worried that he might not be able to pull it off, and that's the thing that's holding him back if the money's not quite, astronomical? Well,
let's pretend for a moment that we know what he's getting paid at Channel 9. I'd suggest it's somewhere in the same category as what he's getting paid, what he would be getting paid.
Yeah,
about 300, I would have thought. At 9, where else is he going to make $600,000? Unless he has aspirations of being an NRL coach. And even then, you're only going to make, your first year, you're not going to make any more than 600. You might make up to $1 million, but what a pretty cool gig, going and working on TV for 300 a year and then copping 300 or 350 from the QRL. And he obviously has the footballing talent and know-how. I don't know. Maybe he's holding out. Maybe he's trying to force him into that, into the promised land of $500,000.
It's just a fascinating way that he answered the question. It just wasn't. It wasn't. Yeah, let me at it. It definitely wasn't that. And
let me ask you something though.
Yeah, a bit concerning.
Let me ask you something. If he doesn't coach, if he doesn't take the gig, does Big Mal come back?
Well, Big Mal's not allowed apparently because all that Test football that Australia's playing. Won't let him coach. Anyway, let's wrap it up there. It's been another long one, but hey, we hadn't spoken for a week, but it's what you're getting. This is finals time. I think there's always plenty to talk about. It's the best time of the year. I know Coxsmith reckons Origin is, but please, the football we saw on the weekend was thoroughly enjoyable. Even watching Melbourne put a number on Manly, it's still like this is a good footy side. And
the intensity's up, isn't it?
At the moment, right now, it's Melbourne's comp to lose, as far as I'm concerned. And we will see how the next week unfolds. We may convene towards the end of the week. We'll see if any interesting newsworthy comes up. But other than that, Coxsmith, it's a pleasure once again. I know you've been slaving away in your backyard and moving concrete.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm just about to go out there and spark the barbecue up and have some hamburgers on the barbecue.
Ooh, very, very good. I've got some ribs in the oven, so
nice.
Happy days here. Happy days here. We'll speak to you next time on Not The Footy Show. Get us on all the places. No reviews this week. Very disappointing. We gave you 2 podcasts in 3 days and not a single review. Are we that bad to listen to? Well, yes. But anyway, for all the new listeners that actually said this week that they've been listening, thank you very much. Even my flatmate decided to have a listen. So well done. Michael Morgan plays for the Bulldogs, apparently, I said. So I apologise for that. We'll speak to you next time on Not The Footy Show. Take us out, Coxsmith.
Pepsi.
Not The Footy Show.
It's people's escape, it's people's relaxation, and we need to do everything in order to continue that great tradition of
Not The Footy Show.
Birthday boy.
Pepsi.